Hey everybody, David Morrison back from Vol Society as we continue our Tennessee football opponents preview for the upcoming Tennessee football season. We are now in SEC play, and it's a brand new world in the Southeastern Conference as the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners have joined the conference, expanding the SEC from 14 teams to 16 teams. And the Tennessee Volunteers will play one of those two new teams, and that is the Oklahoma Sooners on September 21st in Norman, Oklahoma for the SEC opener for both schools. It's kind of weird as a Tennessee fan not opening SEC play against Florida. The last time that's happened, besides a national crisis, whether it's in 2001 or 2020, was back in 2014. So 10 years ago, Tennessee and Florida met in the month of October. I think Tennessee opened that 2014 season against Georgia and then played Florida the following week. Well, 10 years later, Tennessee and Florida is going to meet in the month of October, and we'll preview the Gators in another video. But right here, we're going to focus on Oklahoma. This is a very crucial game for Tennessee early on in the year. I know Tennessee would already have played NC State and Charlotte, but as far as setting the tone for the SEC, play and even national championship play, this is a crucial game. You're going to hear a lot of press and stories about Josh Heupel returning back to Oklahoma, where he led the Sooners to a national championship in the year 2000. He was a former offensive coordinator, was let go of his duties, and finally made the journey to Knoxville and had success right now at the University of Tennessee and now coming back home. So you're going to hear that story very ad nauseum game week, and I'm sure we'll probably mention it on the good old Rocky Top podcast that week. But, taking a look at Oklahoma, new to the SEC last year, 10-3 in their final year in the Big 12. Brent Venables had a great second year in Norman. Now he's going in his third year. They lost to Arizona in the Alamo Bowl. And, kind of like Tennessee breaking out, a new quarterback of the year, a very promising quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. Oklahoma's kind of doing the same thing with Jackson Arnold. Now, both Nico and Jackson Arnold made their debut in bowl games last year. Nico passed with flying colors, won the Citrus Bowl MVP against Iowa, while Jackson Arnold struggled in the Alamo Bowl against Arizona. But now it's kind of a new time, new regime, a little bit at Oklahoma, as former offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby has now taken the job at Mississippi State. Former North Texas head coach Seth Littrell, who has connections with Jackson Arnold, now is the offensive coordinator for Brent Venables' staff. Mentioned Jackson Arnold. There's going to be a lot of attention on this young man. Is he the right guy in Norman? And like I said, you're going to have two young quarterbacks meeting in a big-time marquee matchup. Nico in his first true road game at Oklahoma. Meanwhile, Jackson Arnold, it's a home game for Oklahoma, but, this is another big-time game for him. Up to this point, Oklahoma would have already played the likes of Temple, Houston, and Tulane. Temple, not a great team, but Houston didn't have a great year in the Big 12, but Tulane's a solid team. But, this is a big-time, prime-time marquee matchup right here for two young quarterbacks that's going to, be the future of college football. But kind of looking at the rest of this Oklahoma team, we mentioned Jackson Arnold. The running backs are pretty solid, and Gavin Sawchuk, and a talented, I think a freshman in Taylor Tatum, one of the top running backs in high school football. So you got a 1-2 combo at Oklahoma. Of course, the Sooners love to run the football, even though they're going to really spread the ball out, kind of similar to Tennessee. But, very, very mirror offenses. Wide receivers and Nick Anderson, Jaleel Farouk, and Antrell Anthony returns back for the Sooners. Defensively, they returned 6 starters. They did fire their defensive coordinator Ted Ruff from last year. Now they bring in a very young, energetic defensive staff. They're going to have co-defensive coordinators in Zach Alley from Jacksonville State and Jay Valai from Clemson. Of course, there's your Brent Venables connection, used to be at Clemson. So you're going to see, kind of that young, energetic coaching staff kind of energize this young team here. Danny Stutzman, a very good linebacker for Oklahoma. You're going to hear his name in NFL draft, mock drafts this next spring. But, you're going to hear his name also a lot in college football. Oklahoma's had a a lineage of linebackers over the decades with some of the greatest coaches in college football through Oklahoma. Their secondary is still pretty solid. Gentry Williams, Woody Washington, and Billy Bowman, who had 6 interceptions last year as the free safety position. Defensive line is going to be very interesting to see. That's where they've struggled the first 2 years for Brent Venables, ranked below the top 50 nationally in quarterback sacks. They do have a couple of 5-star defensive ends coming in. Former Tennessee Vol Dejon Terry is also on this Oklahoma team. So we'll see how they'll do here, especially with Nico on the road. We'll see if, do they bring pressure to the young signal caller? Oklahoma also struggled on field goals last year. They got a new special teams coordinator. They do return their kicker from last year, but they do have a couple of kickers and high school All-American and a Florida State transfer to try to battle for that starting kicker position. So, like I said, this game is going to really set the tone for Tennessee, with a win, especially if you get a win on the road. That's really going to open up the possibilities of a real serious playoff run. And with a loss at Oklahoma, now you're kind of like retracting probably your preseason win-loss totals. And I mean, that Alabama game's gotten a lot tougher. That Florida game's a lot tougher, even though both of those games are at home. Georgia's going to be tough regardless. It definitely is going to really set the tone early on in the year, and really for both teams, and Oklahoma making their SEC debut in that game. But very interesting game. Looking forward to it. And hopefully you'll continue to watch our Tennessee football opponents preview as we dive deep into the SEC schedule. This is David Morrison from the Vol Society. We'll see you in the next video.